Oigan, y tenemos el último panel de como este bench. Entonces va a ser un último panel, después viene un break y luego van a venir unas pláticas. Vamos a hablar de Etherify, de cosas que están pasando en el ecosistema. Estoy muy emocionado por este panel. Vamos a platicar de pues muchas cosas que nos vienen a contar Lynn, Dave y Nick. Así que les doy la bienvenida, por favor. Please get here and let's discuss more about the new stuff that you guys are building.
Hello.
So great to see everyone here today. I'm really excited about this panel. I just got put in here, but this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I am passionate about real-world assets and tokenization, and I get to speak to Lynn today and Dave. And kick this off, I'd like to ask you, what do you do? Who are you? And who are you working with?
I'm Lynn. I'm Cube Exchange COO. We are a hybrid exchange. We list a lot of Solana projects. Solana is family to us, and then that's why I'm here. And also, I live in Mexico City now. I love the city, so yep.
I'm Dave. I did get to talk a little earlier, but I work for a company called Etherfuse. We tokenize sovereign debt. So we operate and are incorporated here in Mexico City. I would say our first product was CETES on chain, but we currently offer US, European, British, Brazilian, and Mexican treasuries on chain. And we have a goal to get the top 100 countries, including all Latin America, this next year.
So everyone's probably heard, BlackRock talking about tokenization will be happening for all types of assets and on financial services. I want to ask the panelists here, what are real-world assets or tokenization, and why should people care about it?
Real-world assets is anything that's off-chain. To me, is actually bond, stocks, collectible, art, money before stablecoin. It's also a real-world asset too. And then when you think of it, stablecoin is a form of tokenization of fiat money. And then we've seen how much it's changed life for a lot of people, including myself. So that's why tokenization is very important. It gives access, liquidity, and then doing all the fun stuff like DeFi, staking, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I would say for some reason, I kind of hate the name real world asset. It is, but for me, it's, synthetic asset, access to something off chain. But it is true. It is a tokenized representation of a real asset somewhere else. And I have kind of more liquidity to that asset on chain.
So why should people care about it?
We should care about it because of ease of access. Because, for example, stocks, if you want to buy stocks, you need a brokerage account. So now, if we are able to tokenize it, you can have fractional ownership. You can also might be able to access through DEX, centralized exchange. And then also, a lot of more people will be able to access it. So for me, it's like a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, I can give it, I guess, an account of what we've done with CETES. I know a lot of people here, you do have access to something called CETES Directo, but some of you might not have essentially like a bank account or an investment account. If you are a foreigner, getting access to CETES is quite tricky. With us, if you want to buy or get access to CETES, we don't have any minimums. So you could buy a token worth 1 peso, and you could hold it in your wallet, and you could essentially quickly get access to one of the leading, I'd say, investment safe products very simply, where today there's a lot of barriers for most people to get access to those things. And in Mexico, we have problems with financial access, like 40% of us are unbanked here. So, if you don't have a bank account, you likely don't have access to a CETES Directo account. And if you don't have a company, you likely don't have an investment account. So we remove all those barriers, and all you need is a phone, and all you need is a wallet.
Can you tell me about some of the success stories you've had so far in your journey?
Yes, so this is pre-FTX. November of 2021, I don't know if you remember, there was Constitution down. So like they pull about 47 million of ETH together to buy a copy of the Constitution. So I was working with that team to try to convert ETH into like USD to buy the Constitution, but didn't happen. They lost to, I believe, Ken Griffin from Citadel. So that was actually one of like a story of kind of related to real world asset too, on how crypto can actually pull a lot of resources together and then make big things happen.
I mean, I would say in our case, just enabling Mexico to have some on-chain representation of their currency was a big win for us. So if you think about, you know, one of the, 93, you had the tequila crisis here. A big reason the tequila crisis spun out of control was the currency was closely related to the US dollar, closely tied. So the country was very dependent on the price of the dollar. And when that started to deflate and spin out of control, it just created this chaotic problem. And then Mexico needed to take a loan against from the US for, I think it was like $40 billion. And I know that Mexico did not want to do that. And from that, Mexico started to write a lot of policy to decouple this country from the US dollar. If you look at stable coins, which are a 10,000x improvement over traditional settlements, according to Franklin Templeton, 99.9% of them are based in the US dollar. So Mexico has a real concern to be coupled tightly with the US dollar again, which could lead to, you know, tequila crisis 3.0. Or on-chain tequila crisis, I guess we could say. So for me, it was important for us to think about, you know, we don't just operate in Mexico, we operate in a lot of emerging markets, but creating an opportunity in a way that you could hold assets on-chain that would benefit your community. You know, when you hold stable coins, we love them, but they primarily go to the people running the yield and the value that you created primarily go to those companies. So with CETES, we try to make sure that that value stays here and the yield goes to you. And so I guess I'm talking highly of the accomplishment we made by working with the Mexican government here, but I really feel that it's an opportunity for a market to fight back and for the embetterment of their own sovereignty.
That's a really good point. So that the Mexico can benefit by tokenizing their own government bonds, by putting it on chain, and they essentially receive more liquidity, right? Access to a global market. Where do you see the role of non-US assets within tokenization? What do you think about that?
There's a lot of money in the US for sure. So to be able to tokenize, you know, sovereign bond from like different country will give access to, you know, the institution in US to buy and sell and trade, you know, tokenize sovereign bonds. And then there's a lot of money from the rest of the world too. So definitely, again, back to my keyword, ease of access. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the US now is getting more crypto friendly, and they've made it pretty clear that part of the strategy is dollar dominance. In a way, I feel there's an imperative for, you know, other countries to decide if that's what they want or not, and to kind of create their own sovereignty, to be honest. I am a US person, and I do love where I'm from, but I don't necessarily think that one country should have that much power over everybody else. And so I really do think that either it's too late or people kind of get their act into gear of creating stable coins and assets in their own currency and kind of create a way that their local population can use them. Otherwise, we're going to have, you know, a bunch of different type of crises around the world.
That's a really good point. I'm going to ask the question, what's the consequence of people outside of the US or from wherever, not even in the US, not getting on board with this technology? What's the opportunity that they're missing out on?
I'm gonna let Dave take that question.
Well, I mean, one is just an inefficient way to continue to live. So, I mean, sending money is super expensive in traditional routes. So one consequence is you're just not benefiting from new technology. The other is you're letting, I would say, friendly competitors get a lot really ahead of you. And I feel like it's comparable to like an AI race, you know? Who's going to win the AI race? You know, from a States perspective, we think it's like China or India or the States, you know? I guess there's what people don't talk about is there very much really is a stablecoin race and a Web3 race. And I think some of these smaller sovereignties may get swallowed up where their currencies have a harder time persisting in the future. So I think the consequences, more things like the tequila crisis coming up.
I actually also want to add that when there are so many like stable coins like backed by one currency, it causes a lot of defragmentation of liquidity. So it's very confusing for people, and also like again back to liquidity, who's gonna provide it, and it will affect demand and supply as well.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious to get your perspective. If we're sitting in this room in 5 years' time, what's the state of tokenization? Where are we?
Well, you go first. I'll go after you, unless you want me to.
I'm very practical. I love to be able to buy a house without having to sign all this paperwork, and I love to be able to track like my house title on chain. But I've been moving so much in the last in the last few years, I actually don't know where my house title is. So I would like to see like we have some real utility of real world assets, and then, you know, just make it easy for everyone.
I think that you are going to see policy in the U.S. improve quite a bit. I think you're already starting to see, I think you'll see banks and institutions hold assets. I think banks are going to buy up most of the startups in this room because the talent's there and now they can operate it and they have the cash and the leverage. And I think this is definitely the future. I think maybe 10 years for sure. We don't think about stable coins and RWAs as like a new thing. It'll be a foregone conclusion. But I think at that time, you'll have the institutions adopt it. If you are further along, if you're far enough along or ahead enough as a startup, you might survive. Otherwise, I think you're going to get acquired. So I think we're going to see like, what are the big banks here? I think you're going to see them scoop up a lot of these smaller companies. So go build one and go get acquired.
I guess the question to that is that a good thing or a bad thing to be acquired by big banks? So.
Yeah, I would say it would be bad. It's a fear of mine, I guess I would say. I think it's a bad thing if all the existing institutions just acquire these technologies, but in some way, I guess this is a negative outlook. I don't know how you survive against it at the same time, you know? Like right now, when people evaluate, should I use USDT or USDC or PayPal USD? What do? They say, how much TVL do you have? Well, you know, the biggest RWA issuer, Ondo, with 500 million, that's nothing in traditional markets. So a bank comes around, they'll put 2 trillion in it and they'll start winning that race. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that doesn't happen. But if I'm playing a numbers game, I think it's a strong likelihood. We hope that we survive, and we hope that, you know, we focus traditionally on non-US markets. And we think that's the way that we'll survive, but it's definitely a reality for sure.
Yeah, super interesting. Now it's getting my mind racing on all the possibilities. I think that you know, tokenized assets and real world assets are going to be, well, run on blockchain, but we know that that's going to be the assets that AI uses. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap, right? And I think it's an important space. You touched on national security. You touched on, you know, how big this is going to be. The banks are going to be focusing on this. But I want to put it to the people here in this room, like today. I saw someone who's actually a financial advisor on TikTok and Instagram here. And I want you to speak to them and say, today, how can they get involved in what you're doing in this space? What do they need to know today?
You have to be very careful with what it can be called a security. And there's a lot of regulations behind that. And then here's a funny story. How you determine a security is based on Howey law. And Howey law is actually created in 1946 over an argument whether a piece of land is actually a piece of land or an investment. So regulation right now is not transparent. And then you have to tiptoe around that.
I think if we were comparing today against the game console wars, we're in the Super Nintendo phase, you know? ETH is probably the Atari. Solana's like the new, not Atari, maybe it's the PlayStation 2 or something. I don't I don't know. Don't hate me. I like them all. But what I'm trying to make of that is there's so much opportunity here. You know, when we got a response from the CMBV, we're like, awesome, we're done. People will just buy our stuff. And then people would, how do I buy it? How do I onboard? How do I off ramp? What do I do with it? Each one of those points of contact, we need another startup to help us make it happen. And so the way I would get started is I would just jump in the space and look for an opportunity or a need. And even in Mexico, I mean, I talked to 10 people who off ramp today. They all do it differently. And so do you have a new angle to that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's just so much opportunity. I feel like I'm super old in this space now, and it's only been 3 years. Like we've known each other I feel like we grew up together. So like time moves slow in crypto, but I mean, we've got 10 years of innovation coming up. So just jump in and start trying stuff. Your first and second guesses will be wrong, but keep going. Be brave about it.
Yeah, I actually have one point to emphasize, Dave. So like ETH can process 15 transactions per second, and Solana, in theory, actually 65,000 transactions per second. So
yeah. So what is that? If it's Atari to SNES, or is it? I don't know. You guys let me know later. If yeah.
So for everyone who wants to get involved today, how can they use what you're doing? Like, how can they access your product? What do they need to know?
Sadly, we're a centralized exchange, so everything has to go through a due diligence process. So we're gonna need to have like a real conversation and figure out whether you guys are security or not. Then we can have the second, talk.
Yeah, for us, for you all, you can come to us at app.ethfuse.com and create an account. You can use the code Dave because we are reverse solicitation, but we are here in person. So Dave or AJ, or hit us up on chat. And you can buy directly. We don't have any minimums. Alternatively, we were lucky to have secondary markets enabled. So our tokens, liquidity providers do buy them and then put them on secondary markets. So you could open up your Phantom and type in Etherfuse and purchase any of our assets, hold them and sell them back. So they're pretty available for you guys.
Yeah, just like to add.
Decaf.
Yeah, you can also it's coming soon to Decaf in a nice little UI. You can just choose your tokenized treasuries, your Mexican government CETES or Mexican government bonds, your Brazilian bonds, and whatever else is tokenized.
And we're working on Cube. We're working on Cube. Everyone go tell Cube they need to onboard stable bonds.
Yep.
And we have legal precedents in Mexico. So when you get here, let's do it.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, the important thing to remember, if you had one thing that they had to remember just in one sentence, I'm going to start. So tokenization gives you access to the best opportunities in financial markets in the world.
Absolutely.
If you had anything else to share, one last sentence.
Tokenization for everyone.
Yeah. I would say the foreign exchange market daily is a $7.5 trillion market. If we can bring that on chain, we can make it nearly free for you to exchange currencies. So that's a big opportunity and a big value add to the community. So let's do it.
Awesome. I'm excited about that one. Well, thank you, team.
Thanks.